Okay, good evening, everyone. Welcome to our webinar. Latest in our series of coach education webinars. Tonight's topic is developing a player with a focus on technique. We have Andrew Ziemer and Kevin Thorsen from the NorCal technical staff joining us this evening. They are part of the staff who delivered NorCal Level 1 course. And they're going to be delivering tonight's webinar. So without further ado, I will hand straight over to them. Enjoy. AZ, all you.
Thanks, Andy. Welcome, everybody. Let's get started. And first, I'm going to tell you where I'm at. I don't know where you are, but it's somewhere in your house. I'm in the back corner, close to the router, in my most comfortable chair. I'm over in Holland at the Johan Cruyff Arena. I got permission to travel. Okay, those of you who know me, we like to start with a laugh, but let's get started. You can see here on this slide that we have some rules. You're not even able to talk, so it's going to be hard to interact, but follow the directions with the Q&A text. Andy will filter the questions and then come in several moments during the presentation for questions, and then at the end we should have plenty of time to take some more. Okay, it'll be recorded and sent to everyone, and everyone will also get a copy of this presentation. So hope everybody's safe and sound. I got my favorite drink here, the kombucha, and hopefully you have your drink of choice as well. Let's go, Kevin. So we have a series. Kevin and I, like Andy said, we've been doing the level 1 course, which is ages 8 through 12, working really closely with Paulo Bonamo, Ian, and a few others to deliver this course and go through this content. So this is based on those age groups. You can go to the next one, Kevin. So with NorCal, our foundations of soccer are the game, the player, the coach, and the club. As you can see, the game is in the middle. Tonight will be mostly about the player, also the coach, and the relationship with the development of that player. And the game is always central as a reference for everything we do. So just to get on the same page, I'm not sure about your expectations, but for us, we want to share tonight the NorCal vision on developing technique, and also to improve the coach's understanding of teaching technique for the players age 8 through 12. The level we're focused on tonight is for motivated players, competitive players in NorCal that train 3 days a week with their clubs. So that's sort of the reference of the way we'll be presenting the information.
That's not to say it can't apply to others, but that's where we're coming from. And then if maybe you only train 2 times a week, take from it what you can and bring it to your level, or same if you train 4 times a week.
Thanks, Kevin. So a little bit about the agenda. So the first thing is to go into the player qualities. We call that T2P2, so technical, tactical, personality, and physical. And tonight will be mostly about the technique. We'll go a little bit into and give you a glimpse of the NorCal training methodology and what's important for the process of developing technique. And then we'll get into the biomechanics of technique, and then also the Q&A at the end, and even integrated within the presentation. So if we look at the player and the T2P2, you can see the technical, the tactical, the personality, and the physical for these ages. And our goal with NorCal is to maximize the natural development of the kids in this golden age of learning. And they pick up the technical aspect very well, and they're also very focused, especially in the younger ages, on themselves. So that's a very good time to maximize it.
Also, just a quick note there, when it says developing the appropriate abilities, that's where you can then link in the game at their age to what is appropriate. It's going to be different for an 8-year-old to a 12-year-old, what technical abilities are appropriate when they go and play the game on the weekend.
Good point, Kevin. So we have a pyramid to help form a player. If you look at the foundation, you can see that it's based on physical capacity with psychomotor and coordination. Paulo did a course or a webinar last week on that. You might know that we've had a very strong connection with Fiorentina over the years, but essentially is when you see the technical abilities, it's the ability to solve a tactical demand. Okay, and if they don't have the proper physical foundation, it will make things more difficult and even lower the level that the kids could potentially get to. Okay, so super important. Even though the course isn't about that, it's very important for us as coaches to realize that and be able to address the physical needs as well. You can read this while I'm talking a little bit, but in order for players to maximize their technical development, the motivation needs to be high. And what's more important is that the kids can't possibly reach their highest potential in the amount of hours that they have during the practice with their team. So our job as coaches is to create the environment where the children want to play more on their own, outside of practice, before practice, after, at school, watch it on TV. And at times, if the kids have high aspiration, we could be the factor to push them, to hold them accountable for their highest capacity. You can see Johan says it himself, but he doesn't see the same level of technique and thinks that coaches should really take that into account. So this is the dictionary definition of technique. Sort of obvious, but the next page, Kevin, is more what we have as our technique for NorCal. And you can see it highlighted there. It's the optimization of the abilities and then applying the abilities to a game situation and then increase the speed of execution. So just real quick, write down or reflect. What is the difference between optimization or mastery of technical abilities?
And this might also be a good moment so far if anyone has any questions that they've asked already and wants to bring up, or Andy wants to bring them up maybe.
No questions just yet.
Okay, good. So let's go to the next one. So in our continuation of our definition with NorCal, it's the optimization of technical abilities is reaching the personal best or most effective ability, and it's a continuous process of improvement. So basically, it's whatever the kids have at this moment, use it to the best of your ability, knowing that you're going to be on a continuous process of improving it. Okay? Once that process is in place, we need to get the technique applied to tactical situation, and you'll see that as we get more into the methodology. But then it becomes as an important factor to resolve the demands of the game. Okay, and then eventually you want to reduce the time of execution, which is efficiency. Okay, and then you can see below. That takes time, but the idea is that over time we want the kids to do things automatically. Okay, so let's go to the next one, Kevin. So this is the TETA, we call it, technique related to tactic or technical tactical. And these are some of the main points for passing, receiving, dribbling, shooting. So you can see like the angle of body is important, the first touch away from pressure or based on the next action. So they're doing things more with intent, or the speed, direction, accuracy of the pass. So the technique is giving the pass, and then the direction or the speed or the accuracy is more in line with the needs of the player, or in line with the choice that you made, for example. Kevin, anything you want to add to this one?
No, you got it.
Okay, perfect. So didactically, we as coaches have to be able to observe what's happening with our players based on the intention of what we're trying to improve, or the behavior we're trying to change in our players. And we always know that we have a process in our back pocket from easy to more difficult. And we can use the ingredients like space, rules, number of players, touches, what have you, to increase or decrease the level of difficulty. When you're teaching technique and the biomechanics, it's important to start with the ball not moving, especially in the younger age groups. Then you can increase it with more movement. Now it's similar to a game situation. And then when you get to the game itself, then it's game real. So just quick reflection, think about your process as a coach, and where do you focus within your training, whether it's your club has a certain way of doing it or you have your own way within your teaching, but when do you normally focus the most on the technique?
Especially bearing in mind that right now it's more about the technique and not necessarily the data.
Yeah, so the biomechanical aspects of the technique. Kevin.
Next one.
Yeah, sorry, I was trying to give him the hand signal. Okay, so with NorCal, we have 4 stages, starting with the warm-up. Okay, you can see there it's physical, mental, and technical. So when all possible, try to have the ball involved, especially with these ages, 8 through 12. Then we get into the exercise or the technical drill number 1. And that's where we're working on the technical, but also the individual small group tactical. Okay, and then later we go into the technical tactical, and then the final aspect is all 4, the T2, P2. All right, Kevin. So in the characteristics of a training, we pulled out from our manual the ones that we felt were the most important to improve technique. So the first is the intensity, that there needs to be maximum effort and focus. So if the kids aren't into it and they're not focused, they're not going to learn as well. You need progressions in the training, so that it starts and then it evolves and it builds throughout the training session, okay, as you go towards the game situation. Efficiency, we need a lot of repetition, as you see at the end, and if you're efficient with your time, then the kids get more repetitions. And then also stay focused on the objective. So observe and coach mainly what is related to the aim. And you can have an aim for the practice, but you can also have an aim for each part of the practice. You know, so the warm up or the first part, the technical part.
So Andrew, do you want to touch real quick on what the coach can do either before or during or after training to try to help ensure as many of these come out as possible?
I mean, I would say that it's going to be about, number 1, planning would be the starting point based on your objectives and what you want to improve. And then during the training and after, if we can develop a reflection process based on how it's going, then if you miss something, then you can change it. And if you don't catch it during the training at first, that's okay. But after, when you get in the car and you drive away, try to think back and then you can remember for the next time. When I say planning, it's like not too many players in lines, multiple organizations. So if you're going to do 2 exercises with 4, that's a lot better for 8 kids than 1, for example. Is that what you were thinking about there, big guy?
Yeah, exactly.
Hey, teamwork makes the dream work. So this is just a chart, and don't just look at the 7 and 8. But if you look through the ages up to 12, you can see that the number of stars puts the importance less or more on that technical action or ability, sorry. So it starts individual in the young ages, okay? The shooting's always in because the kids love to shoot, and it's a technique on the instep that takes a long time to develop. And then we start to introduce passing and receiving. And then as you can see, it gets, as you get older and older, it becomes a little bit more about the ball's in the air now. So you start to think about heading. The kids have more muscles. The ball is able to travel longer distances. So it's just a chart, but it's not like you have to live exactly by it, because maybe your team needs something more at a younger age, or they need something in the, for the older ages at a younger age. So now getting into the biomechanics. How are we doing on time, Kevin?
About
Wow.
20 minutes in.
First time in my life I'm on time. So the biomechanics is basically the study of the mechanical laws relating to the movement and structure of living organisms. So what does that mean for us soccer coaches? It's a little bit different. So let's go to the next page. So this is an example. And what we'll do now is we'll have some video up front. We just want to tell you, in order to have enough time for questions and show some video and show the didactic process and point out some things to you, we will give you all the videos in the presentation, all the links to them, which are on the NorCal website. So you'll be able to look at all the other ones. But tonight we can only show video on like 3 of the techniques. So this is something that's important that we can observe as coaches, and that we understand what the biomechanical aspects are, so that we can make sure that the kids improve optimally in the younger ages where they pick it up very well. So I don't have to go through all of them, but let's observe now in the video, and we may have Andy take a couple questions in the video and turn the volume down. So you can even take notes if you want. You might like something that you see or something that you recognize.
You guys want to jump in with a couple of questions right now?
Yeah, I think it sounds good.
So there's a couple come in from Jason Carter and Daniel Polito asking about the play, practice, play model. So I'll just go through the 2 questions. Regarding the didactic model, how does this relate to the current play, practice, play model? And then the other one is US soccer teaches play, practice, play. Where does technique play into this methodology?
Okay, good. I'll start with it. I mean, I've taken 2 of the grassroots courses myself, and I did a DOC course and got to know 2 of the people that helped develop. And the play, practice, play is based on beginning soccer players and looking at the dropout rate of the amount of kids that quit at age 13. So they're trying to make sure that the kids have a lot of fun and they have game-like experiences so they can fall in love with the game and not quit. That's my interpretation of why. It stems a little bit from the French, where they use like a whole part whole. But that's what I would say. As far as the didactic process for technique, I would say that in the play, practice, play model that, and we can get into it maybe later with another question, but there's theory and there's science and there's somewhere in the middle, which is probably what most of us do, is a blend of a lot of different types. But, I think we as coaches, what we need to study all the models, all the methodologies, and then for our own environment, our own level of players with their motivation, their commitment, then we have to find the structure and the methodology that works best for us. Kevin, anything you want to add about that?
No, I mean, I think that the only thing I would add real quick is when you come into the didactic methodology, you can, maybe if you're not applying the whole part of it, you can still try to apply it where possible. So maybe your club runs a different training model than the NorCal one, and maybe your club runs with a play, practice, play for some parts. But what you could do is then really try to dial in the practice part, how you can apply the didactic methodology within there, and then layer it up like that. So it doesn't necessarily have to be about the entire practice, but how you can use it.
Another question, one more while this is going on. You could see what they're doing is it starts out with one player in a ball, and then now it increases with complexity alone, and then they start to add more players. And
Hey, you want to take another question? Yeah.
Yeah, let's.
What is your approach to instilling discipline or retaining attention during longer practices?
My approach?
I'm presuming that's on the technical practices.
Yeah. Well, I mean, we have a whole section on the personality. We feel that if the kids have a growth mindset and they feel like they can always get better, that they'll be more motivated. But that's part of the feeling and the touch that we need to have as a coach of how to create the environment. And sometimes you're joking with the players. Maybe that's before or on a break. Sometimes you're celebrating a goal that was so incredible. And sometimes maybe you're giving them a kick in the ass because they have a better standard that they're capable of. So it's a mix of everything. And I think we would address that more in the personality part a little bit, and how to coach in a way like player centered, where you're coaching on the player's needs rather than the technical part. If I saw that maybe within a technical training the kids were getting bored, or they were dropping it a little bit in a level, but they were capable of doing it, I would go to the next progression, because maybe the challenge is gone, so the concentration level is not high. It's important when the kids are learning that they have the challenge that's appropriate, so not too easy, not too difficult. And that's the fun part of coaching, in my opinion, is that we can constantly be trying to progress it to the next step, even within a simple exercise.
I'll just add also, I think that goes back to the previous point Andrew was making about the motivation for the players, where whether it's through helping them develop intrinsic motivation or sometimes providing extrinsic motivation for them, you can have a big influence in how you help motivate your players in those parts of the practice. And it's going to be different for different teams and different coaches who have their own personalities, but being aware of how you can influence the motivation for the players and make sure that they're still engaged and bringing that intensity during the technical part of the practice.
Another thing I would just say, good job, Kevin, but I would say catch him doing it the way that you like it, and celebrate those moments. Instead of like calling him out always, hey, it's not good enough, or you need to do this, you need to do that. Yes, that's what we're looking for. Now how can we keep this level, as long as possible, or for the rest of the practice, that kind of thing. So and kids need encouragement as well, but sometimes they need a kick in the rear. So this next one, what we're going to do is we're going to try to get you engaged the best way we can in a webinar without being able to talk with you. So during the video, we want you to write down the biomechanical aspects of running with the ball. In Italy, they call it guiding, but so in running with the ball. So as you watch the progression of the video, you can take notes, and then Andy, we can do
and the 1v1 fake, like the dribbling part also.
Yeah, that'll phase into the dribbling. Exactly. Thanks, Kevin. And Andy, if you want to take some more questions, since they can be observing and listening at the same time, no problem.
Yeah, there's one here from Jesus Mata. Taking player development into account when building a game model or a methodology, at what point is the concept of theta introduced or integrated?
Kevin, what do you think?
In the game model, it depends a little bit on how your club does it. So some clubs, when they've tried to develop their overall club methodology, they put the game model as the first thing they develop, and then going down from that, it would be coming in from the phases of the game into the actions and the tactical principles, and then the player actions to execute those principles. And that could be one way of it being the almost highest level of detail from your overall game model. Another way of doing it, if you're doing more from the player and the skills or technique side up, would be, as you look, for example, here in the PowerPoint where we've got the dribbling, we did the juggling first. Then after you layer in the techniques, then you can start looking at where you would apply them tactically. So it could be either way, depending on how your club is trying to structure your game model and your methodology. But the main thing is making sure you're aware that how does it connect to the parts both above and below it. So if it's you're going from the technical aspects first, dribbling, and then you're looking at, okay, the angle of the cut, the tempo of the dribble, the type of touch you take, and then how does that relate into the tactical side? Or if you're going from the team tactical principle and then down from the tactical principle to the individual tactical actions within that, and then from that to the theta and the technique combined down to the actual techniques, just being aware of how it relates to the rest of your game model is what I would say.
Good. I told you I was going to put you on the spot a few times. Very good answer. Yeah, and what I would say is just if you look at like the world in soccer, it's no secret that some people believe a little more in a game-based approach, some more in isolation. And, you know, for me, I think as coaches, we should try everything, but we have what we think works the best. We don't exactly know when kids learn, but you know, it depends on many factors with the motivation level, the ambition of the player, and also the amount of time you have them, the hours you have them during a week. But the technical tactical with NorCal, the theta, it starts at a young age still, but more at their level. Okay, so after the technical part. But I think the kids, before they can think about like another player really well, they have to be able to manage themselves first. So I think you have to be aware in the younger age groups that you don't go too much into the group tactics or more than like one other person until they're pretty competent individually and with one other person before you get too advanced. So how much time left on this one, Kevin?
The last couple seconds right here.
I thought. Good question, Jesus. Hope you're safe over there in the 916 or the 530, wherever you are. So now you can see looking. So just think, were you able to see these things in those players? Because those are professional academy players from Fiorentina. And you could see that their technique and biomechanics was very, very good. But these are all the aspects. So proper touch. So long when there's space, short when their space is tight. Okay, supporting leg bent, well balanced. At the time of the ball contact, knee and chest over the ball, arms out for balance and protection. During the level one, we talk a lot about, you know, how to help the kids feel comfortable at a young age with contact, and also the value of protecting the ball. But that posture is super important. Okay, and then the guiding foot is relaxed, proper surface, make contact on the correct surface. Okay, and then guiding the ball with fluid motion and appropriate change of pace and direction. Kevin, you want to go through the fake a little bit?
Yeah, so then combining that now when you're adding in the 1v1 section and it's not just unopposed. First off, focus, watching the defender, keeping the ball moving, keeping your head up, athletic posture with a low center of gravity, rapid movement of the trunk and leg around the ball, and then a quick change of speed. So making sure that when they do that, they're touching the ball into the proper space and angling away from the defender, which is now where you can start to see the biomechanics connecting with the next step of the theta as well. Watching the defender's posture, balance, and momentum, and then pushing the ball into the opposite direction of the defender's momentum. Shielding the ball from the defender by keeping the ball on the foot away from the defender and using the body, shoulder, arm to keep the defender away. One of the things, especially in the younger ages, they tend to use their dominant foot more and not the one that's shielding the ball and further away from the defender. So that's a point that's very important to help them understand early on. And then making body contact with the defender in order to create separation, like Andrew was just talking about before as well. So hopefully you guys were able to see and pick up on some of those biomechanics during the video, and we'll also have in the PowerPoint we send out, it'll go through and you can watch it again and see if you observe something different than maybe you did the first time.
Perfect. What I would add just before we move on, Kevin, if you go back to that, what's very important as coaches is that the players have to start to observe as they're attacking. They have to observe the defender. And then the defender has to start to observe the attacker. Because in the young ages, the kids, they do things, and we want them to be thinking more and taking advantage if the player's too far away to gather speed, or if their body's spun a certain way, how can you go towards that direction and then go against to the other, so the observing part and the vision is super important in the 1-versus-1. We're good. So now we'll do again the receiving and passing. We really like this progression. So look at and maybe even take notes how you see the progression as they go from the ball standing still, and then they add multiple players. And we like this one. And Andy, if you want to do questions, no problem.
Yeah, we've got one from Macias at Atletico Santa Rosa. It's less of a question, more of a comment, but we'd love to hear your thoughts and feedback on it. So Macias says, in my opinion, coaches should work on building a relationship and understanding the cultural background of where each player is coming from. They need to create a safe space for learning as well. Kids will respond better when they know that the coach cares more about them and the results overall.
Very good point, Matthias. Hope you're safe, buddy. I had something sort of written down, and just while you're listening, let's reflect for 10 seconds. Let's think about worldwide, the top players in the world, and let's ask where they come from, what kind of circumstances. So the culture has a lot to do with it, the passion, the desire, and then how much ambition. But for our kids, I agree completely with Macias. Is the first thing is you have to care about them and be there for them and help them learn. But hopefully they're going to like it so much that they're going to want to be driven to become their best technically when they're young and they have a lot of time. Thanks, Macias. Any other ones, Andy? Or?
Yeah, we have one from Larry Martinez. What are your thoughts on repetitions regarding PPP?
I mean, my personal view, is the game. And one thing you can maybe look up is like repetition without repetition and perception action coupling. So I like to know all sides of everything, and depending on the level, I'll use a blend of certain methodologies, but you can argue from the side of the people who believe that isolation doesn't make kids better. You can argue that the game demands repetition without repetition. So you have to filter based on what you see in situations, the space, the opponents, your own players, where the goal is, and then you have to make a decision, and that's the perception action coupling. So they would argue that. So you get more repetitions of situations that are varied in a play, practice, play model, and you get more repetitions of isolated situations. And the kids definitely need a lot of repetition, and it's a matter of where they get it. Do they get it at the practice? Do they do it as homework? Are they motivated to go on their own? So maybe do some research. I would say that, you know, our jobs as coaches are to know everything that's out there and who's using it, and then experience it yourself at your level, and then decide for yourself before you just follow any certain way. Kevin, anything you want to add? Or
Yeah, I mean, the one thing I'll just add is if you're going into the biomechanics side of it, obviously in the younger ages, for the body to be able to feel comfortable executing an action, a lot of times it has to be repeated a lot. And it's up to us as coaches in how we can help influence that. And the ideal situation is if we can help inspire players to go out and work on their own and get even more repetition than what we can provide if we just do it in the practice. So it's how can we help create an environment and help stimulate the player so that the juggling, dribbling, passing, receiving, shooting, all of those repetitions that they need time and time again. And if we only do them in the practice, it won't be enough. But if we can help make them want to do it on their own, that can be the difference. And then you can help have more success when you come into your practice where they already have a higher base level of the technique coming into it.
Good. Yeah, we talked about this a lot during the level 1 courses, people that were doing their grassroots as well, or their D license. And for example, you could combine both ways. You could start with passing back and forth, then you can have 2 pairs of 2s and go into 3 versus 1. You could stop the 3 versus 1, go back into 2s. And then you can focus on something that you observe biomechanical and try to make sure the kids realize and can do the right biomechanic. Or you could start with the 3 versus 1, and then you say, okay, the ball's all over the place, you know, and then you could take them back into pairs, for example. That's one thing that we sort of talked about. But I think that's something that, as you take the courses, don't take them literal, that this is from the federation, I have to do this. Based on your objectives for the club and then for your team, and then you personally with your philosophy and all that, and then based on the level of the player, their commitment, how often they play, if they do other sports, all that. You have to find the right methodology, in my opinion, to make them still love the game. Loving the game and wanting to come to practice should always be number 1. And I know a lot of you that are on this call, you do a great job of creating the environment where the kids they'll do whatever you tell them they need to do because they just want to become better. So should we move into the next part? So now with the biomechanics on the passing and receiving, you can see what's super important is now that you're starting to cooperate with someone else. So it's connecting and transferring the ball to a teammate. The approach is very important, that they're in line with the ball and they take quick short steps to get the coordination and timing. And then a large last step will bring power and precision. So if you see deficiencies in the pass, you know, you got to be able as a coach to observe it first, and then based on these points, you have to see which one the kids are having a problem with, or the individual player. While you're reading through the rest of them, you know, I would say one thing that can be very good as a coach is if you take the kids out of the training that are having the issues and work with them a little bit one-on-one, especially in the younger ages, because that individual attention, you can really hone in on it and even play a few balls with them, kick back, and then put them back into the environment. Okay. The posture needs to be very good, again, with the chest over the ball. The place foot's very important. you know, that it's going in the direction, and the knee needs to be slightly bent. Okay, and then the rotation of the hips are at 90 degrees, and then it's an explosive movement, and the impact ankle is locked with the toes pointed upward. Okay, and then the arms once again are away from the body for protection and balance, and then they counter rotate. So if you hit a ball, you know, in one direction, you'll go opposite the kicking leg. And then Kevin, you can do the receiving. I think Kevin does this better than me, by the way, this part. Good job, Kevin.
So now the receiving part, the objective is put down as control of the ball to keep it in possession. Doesn't necessarily have to be a close touch or a far touch, but it's whatever you can do to keep control of the ball. So making sure, and this is one a lot of the players have a difficult time with in the younger ages, is the correct assessment of the angle, distance, and speed with which the ball is coming. Making sure they can read that first. Otherwise, it's very difficult to have all of the other biomechanics lead to a successful action. They want to then move towards the incoming pass with proper posture to have good balance, making sure they're keeping their eyes on the ball until the ball is controlled. All of this still being prior to the actual first connection with the pass. Right before the impact, the receiving leg reaches towards the ball, starts retracting in line of the ball's trajectory in order to cushion the ball's motion. The surface impacted by the ball needs to be relaxed and fluid to create a cradling motion. Arms up and out from the body for balance and protection. Again, just showing that they really need to be aware of all of their body movements to be able to successfully execute the biomechanics of their technique. And then immediate awareness of your surroundings and prepared for your next move with correct first touch. So again, there, the last bit, linking it in with the theta again, and now what the next step is. And applied to all surfaces of the foot, whether it's the inside, the outside, or the sole. So maybe think about how many of those you noticed or were able to see during the little passing and receiving video. If there's any here that you maybe think that maybe you don't focus on enough when you teach it, or maybe some that you focus on a lot and you can see it coming out in your plays. But just a little moment for some self-reflection and whether you're equally aware of all of them.
And you'll see like common mistakes with the players, and sometimes they're linked with another reason. So it's important to observe at the simplest or the beginning first. So like for receiving, and I'll put Kevin on the spot because he works a lot with these ages. What's one of the biggest things that they don't do before they receive it?
They either read the pass incorrectly or they don't come towards the ball.
Exactly. So they think that they're where they should be to receive it. If they're there and now the ball comes a little bit from them, what do they do automatically? Instead of moving their feet, they reach for the ball, for example. Now their balance is off, so it breaks everything else. So really try to observe at the starting point of where it breaks down biomechanically and then build it up from there. So, okay, let's move to the next one, Kevin. So this last slide, and then we'll explain a few things and go for some more questions. The lecture that Paulo did last week was on the physical, and I'm sure many of you have been to the Fiorentina courses, but you have the psychomotor in the early ages of a player's development that are the most optimally developed. And then there reaches a point around age 10 through 14 where you can maximize the coordination abilities. And it's important in the structure of our trainings that we link the technical aspect we're working along with the coordination. And so this chart will be a reminder of the main, most important coordination abilities for certain techniques. So this isn't a physical coordination ability course, but it's important that you know this. And the recording of Paulo's presentation will be available soon, and you can check that out. So we were going to go into just a little bit of a summary, the main thing first is just understand the motivation level of your players, like what Macias said, care about them and love them, and hopefully they'll want to work harder, especially also on their own or at school. Translate everything you learn, and for this process on the biomechanics of technique, also to your environment and your level. Okay. Remember that we have an important role in the teaching of the technique. And one of the main things that we tend to do is get carried away, especially with tactics and systems of play and all that. And what we're doing when we're spending time on things that the kids don't really learn naturally at a young age, we're slowing down the development in the things like technique and coordination and things that they pick up very well. So remember your role, but also that sometimes you have to stimulate the kids within the environment. In Dutch, they have a word called prickle. It's like poking. You're always creating that environment where the kids want to do it at their optimum level, and they learn to enjoy it, and it becomes a standard over time. Okay. And then as coaches, continuous education. I mean, there's so much information out there. There's studies being done. There's clubs at high level that have implemented maybe different philosophies than what you're used to, or different methodologies. But make sure that you continue. What I would say, just in closing, I don't know if Luciano Fusco is on this call, but I'll use him as an example. I think he might be actually on the call because somebody told me, but he works at the earthquakes. If you're in region 2 or 3, 4, 1, you're so close. Why not go watch him work? If you haven't seen somebody like that teach technique and inspire players, you're missing out. And there's people like that all over that are more than willing. And the last thing I'd like to say is I'm humbled to be on this call with Kevin, and we're just messengers, but everything I've learned was from somebody who came before me. And what I realized, the higher the level the person, the more open they were to change and try new things. So select a mentor nearby. And if this is one of your areas that you really want to improve, then put time into developing all aspects of your program, your curriculum. Get the parents on board with it because they're with their kids the most. And, we can keep the kids in love with the game and highly, highly motivated to become footballers and special players. And last thing, I didn't get into like the personality of the coach, but if you want to create technical, creative players, you have to have a philosophy that matches with that. So certain things like if you always play a 9-year-old in the center of defense, he's probably not going to get too good on his 1-versus-1. For example, if somebody never plays outside the goal, how are they going to develop, the right technique and awareness to be able to, deal with the back pass and pressure of a forward? So, that's your challenge within your environment to make sure that what you do every day on a daily basis supports the technical development. Otherwise, we're going to continue to get kids at 13, 14, 15 that are deficient. And lastly, when we go to Europe, we see that our players are 2 to 3 years behind technically of a lot of Europeans. And a lot of it has to do with futsal and small-sided games and free play linked with a lot of repetition against a wall or juggling or whatever they do. So we'll open it up. Kevin, I'd like to give you the floor for a few closing comments as well, because you always add value when I bring you into the conversation.
Yeah, the one thing I would just add in the whole technique side as well is one of the biggest tools you have a coach in it is observation. So whatever you're doing, observe and see how it's impacting the players. If you're working on technique in your warm-up and your first technical exercise, do you see it coming out in the small-sided game or the tactical exercise or the final game? Do you see it in the game on the weekend? And really try to make sure that you're not just prescribing something and not following up on it, but observing and seeing what change and what impact it has. And then even the next level is self-reflecting and adjusting if needed on, okay, I tried this and maybe I can see an improvement in the players and I can see that they're developing their technique here. If I try this, are they going to improve it more? Are they going to improve it less? And don't be afraid to try it and see how it works. And not everything you do is going to work the first time, but sometimes you need to know what didn't work, so you're secure that what you've been doing is working, because you can tell the difference.
Okay, let's jump into the questions. And what I will say is the only good thing about this situation we're in is a lot of kids are spending a lot of time with the ball. And as coaches, let's challenge ourselves to sustain that when we come back from the social distancing. Because now, in my opinion, a lot of kids who say they're ambitious, say they want to play at a certain level, they're actually starting to put the work in. And in my opinion, they should be doing what they're doing now on top of their practices if they want to be a top player. And so let's open it up, Andy. We got plenty of time for questions, no stress.
Absolutely. You mentioned creativity a few minutes ago. So we got one here from Jason Carter, who says, how do you increase creativity when working on technique, or does that come from the game setting alone?
Yeah, I mean, I think one goes with the other. And if you don't have much technique, it's going to be hard to be creative. But in the process, when you're working maybe in the beginning stages, that you're not really working on creativity. But as you get into the later part of the practice and you're putting it in the game situation, that's where the creativity would come out. And the key as a coach is the kids shouldn't be afraid to fail, because the things that we want them to be able to do someday have to be repeated a lot of times, and they need to have a lot of failure. So creating an environment where they feel good to try things and they're rewarded for trying something that they yet can't do, for me, that's very important in the creativity. I also think the kids need to develop idols, watch them on TV and YouTube, and go to games live and watch older players and play with players that aren't on their team that can do things that they can't yet do, to be inspired in some way.
I would also add real quick with the creativity side, a lot of what you see that's technically creative in a game doesn't just happen in isolation. It's something they've tried previously. And even something as simple as if you're working on dribbling and saying, okay, now combine two different moves together or two different movements, that's helping stimulate their creative process in choosing two actions and coupling them together on their own without being prescribed it. And it could still be individual technique. It could be, okay, try to pass it back and forth, but you can't use the inside of your foot. So now they have to think of new ways they can use their body to achieve the same outcome of where they want the ball to go or whether they want to beat a player, but giving them the room to try and combine their body movements in new ways without having to be told how to do it first sometimes can help develop the motor imagination or creativity that way in players as well.
And that's more like in the tactical for next week, the creativity, but the motivation level of the player has to be very high. And for creativity to develop, it has to be an original thought from the player. So what becomes really important is that we're not interjecting coaching at the moment when they're processing and trying to do a creative action, because you'll slow down the cognitive speed. And also, I see a lot of coaches, you're in, take him, 1v1, take him. Maybe they saw a through ball and you were going to score a goal. And if you only dribble the player, then the central defender comes over and he's on the wing. So at a certain point, I think we can go really into the depth next week. We'd love for you to join us next week again on the tactical. And good question, though. Keep them rolling, Andy, if you have them.
Yep. Great. We've got another one from Jasko Begovic, who says, once the players are proficient, how do you create stress to challenge their decision-making through technical repetitions?
I would say what we do and a lot is bring it to competitive level. And maybe at some ages, when the kids are very sharp, always you start with competition even, but if Kevin and I are playing and we have a partner or two partners next to us, how can you create a competition? So now they're having to do it faster. Now they're rushing it and maybe they're making more mistakes. That's one way. Kevin, you have another part to that answer? Or?
No, I think you covered the main one, and then just making sure you're linking it to if you're able to see that in the isolated situation, they're having a lot of success, even when you're putting the extra stress of competition on, try to make that situation more complex. So it could be something as simple as if you're passing back and forth, maybe there's two players and now they have to choose which one to pass back and forth. And there's just a little extra layer of them having to think and process mental information while the focus is still the technique in that situation.
Good one. That's why I asked, buddy. Okay, next question.
Next one is a good one from Mike Muniz. Are rondos technique?
I've never seen like the definition, so I don't know if this is right or wrong. I think they're technique. If you play a 3 versus 1, you're working on technique. But I don't know. I'll call you, Mike. I'd love to have a 30-minute discussion about that one. Welcome to NorCal, baby. Kevin, you have anything to add?
I think if you look back to the training format where we had the 4 different stages, the technique can be focused on in different parts of the training, and a lot of it's on how you as the coach emphasize what's going on in that part. So if you're doing, for example, a 3v1 rondo, if your coaching points are related to the technical side, how their first touch is, whether their body's biomechanically opening up to help them with that inside cushioning of the ball, if it's the type of pass they play with the speed and the connection and the accuracy, it can be more related to the biomechanics of the technique within the rondo. If you're focused more on the decision they made or when they played the pass, then you can put the emphasis back more on the tactical side. I think you as a coach have a lot of leeway in how you actually utilize the different parts of your practice. And if you want to use it as a technique, maybe you put it in the second stage of your practice. If you're using it from a more tactical side, maybe you put it more in the third stage of your practice.
Benjamin came in with a comment. I like it. He said, they are whatever you want it to be. 3 versus 1 to goal is tactical. So let's take another question.
Another one. Here you go. AZ, you were talking about kids having role models and idols when they're young to look up to. Who are your mentors when you were a player?
I
know one of them.
I can't remember that far
Lineker.
back. First was my oldest brother and then my other brothers, because we created 2 versus 2 on our dirt soccer field. But I remember at a certain point, Pele became very important. And then at a certain point, Ruud Gullit was a big player that I liked. I liked his combination of like grace, power, effectiveness. That's what I can think of right now. I like that question though, because it makes me think back to the day or the days. That's all I have. Kevin, what about you? Laudrup?
Me, it was always Scholes.
Scholes?
Yeah. Good one.
Yeah. Benjamin just reminded me Maradona. I warmed up with a Napoli Maradona shirt for two years. I still have it with the Brutini on the front. So it was like warming up in that shirt gave me a little bit more of what he had, I guess.
A little bit better left foot.
Yeah.
Super rude in the mood.
Benjamin's on fire. I love it. Benjamin, we should do one of these with all four
Ben's doing
brothers.
his own webinar.
Yeah, he got
So here's one a little bit more practical for some of the coaches out there. What's your recommendation for a single coach coaching 14 to 16 players of varied technical ability? Do you focus on the top performers, or do you focus on the players needing help if you're one coach with 14 to 16 players?
It's a good question. What age were they? Hopefully not under 8.
Didn't say, so they can be whatever age you want them to be.
Okay. I mean, I would say the main thing is the kids that really need the help, you need to find the time to help them. I remember back, our father used to have kids come early to practice, and he would meet them to give them personal attention. So maybe you could start practice 15 minutes early and rotate players through so it's fair. You can help them all on their own level. But, I think they need a combination of everything, as far as sometimes playing together mixed, and maybe sometimes, like, for example, if you were going to do groups, you could do 2 groups of 4 and 1 group of 6. You could put the better players at the 6, and then you could pay more attention with the other groups, knowing that the more competent players could manage it themselves. But I would try to get an assistant coach as well. And these ages, 14's a lot.
I would also add being aware of your progressions, because especially if it's something individual, if you already know what the progression is going to be, for example, if you're doing some juggling and maybe it's alternating feet, maybe you can give the easier progression for the group with more challenge with the technique, that they have to get 2, like 1 on each foot, and then they can let it bounce once, and they get 1 on each foot again. But whether it's juggling, dribbling, whatever technique, being aware in your mind already of what your progressions might be to either make it more complex or more simple. And then you can give that specific to the players who need more of a challenge or less of a challenge, which goes back to the planning that Andrew was talking about earlier, that the more you're planning and aware going into your practice, the easier you're going to be able to adapt to what situations you face during the training.
Yeah, maybe also give the kids a choice rather than making everybody do the same thing. So, okay, we're gonna work on juggling, 3 minutes, 4 minutes. Everybody work on what you want to work on, and then maybe the beginning player can do kick and catch, or like Kevin said, kick, right, left, bounce, and the kids that are really competent, maybe they're picking the ball up with their feet and doing around the world or something. So, Andy, I don't know what the time. It's 8:04. So do we want to do one more question, one final question? Just to respect everybody's dinner so it doesn't get cold?
Sure. Let's have a look through here. We've got a lot of questions. Here we go. Here's a good one. Robert Olson. Do you see an issue with players taking certain styles from professional players instead of creating their own, or do you see that as a stepping stone to them developing their own styles?
Early on in a child development, there's a period where they really mimic others, and I think at that stage it's really good to do things that couple your on the field, taking them to games, and following and hopefully liking a player that they want to emulate. It could be doing contests and you give them posters, whatever, but somehow get the kids where they're looking up to, aspire to be like somebody. And then at a certain point, I mean, I've seen, been lucky enough to coach a few kids, like a lot of you, that have gone on to at least get a start in a professional career. And like a kid like Travian Sousa from Modesto Ajax, he played at Ballistic, Sac Republic. He's playing in Germany. The kids loved him. So by bringing an older player around younger kids and mix them in, it could be the assistant coach for the gentleman earlier who had 14 players. But a local, like if you take a 9 or 10-year-old to a high school playoff game, for them, that's the World Cup. So, I think I think it's important to paint pictures and give examples for children to look up to. Anything, Kevin, to add to that one? I think I nailed it.
Yeah, you got that one.
That's the only one. That's good. Okay, cool. Well, what we're going to do, just Kevin will show the next few slides. These are the links. These links actually are much longer. We had to cut them down just to, make it tonight in time. So you'll see a lot of variations for the shooting. And then we also have the biomechanics. Then we have...
we'll have that for all of the techniques on this PowerPoint that we'll send out to you guys.
Exactly. So anyways, thanks for attending. We hope you picked up something new to influence your players. And stay safe. We appreciate NorCal Premier, #1, for the vision to always find a way to make the coaches as important as the players, which we are, maybe more important sometimes, to get them staying in the game or moving to another sport. And we hope you can visit us next week, and also check out Ian again tomorrow. I think Paulo's doing another one. Benjamin's doing another one. And
Ian's on Friday.
And I wish we were all on a field together, but we'll be there soon. So let's come back hungrier than ever. Thank you, everybody. Thanks, Kevin, too. And
Thanks a lot, guys. Thanks for taking the time out to be on.
Thanks, everyone. Good night. Stay
Good
safe.
night. Okay. Thanks, everyone. Good job.